Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Women's Eye podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Stacey Gualandi. Here on the Women's Eye, we like you to meet wise women who are doing extraordinary things, making a difference, and leading by example. This episode is brought to you by the CASCO Financial Group in Phoenix, Arizona. CASCO's president, Scrivano, started her business to help people create the financial strength to achieve their dreams. Speaking of dreams, hoop dreams, that is. Megan Carle was a top executive at Nike for 3 decades. She climbed the ladder into positions at the athletic apparel company that no woman had ever held before. She's got game. It was her dream job until it wasn't. During Megan's career, she experienced workplace bullying so toxic, she had to walk away. She hopes her new book, Walk Away to Win, will be a catalyst for conversation and a game plan for a healthy workplace. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Stacey.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. We have a mutual person in common, so I'm so excited that she brought you to me. But I've got to say, probably after 30 years at Nike, the last thing you thought you would have been an expert on or become an expert on is bullying, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I'm an expert, but what I will say is there aren't many people who are writing books about sort of real time bullying in the workplace, which is surprising because it affects 80 million workers in the United States. And when we sort of put that in context, it's 1 in 2 US workers are affected by workplace bullying, yet it's still known as the undiscussable. So I'm not sure about my expertise level. I'm experienced. I interviewed a lot of people who experienced it. And I'm working to just shine a light on it.
Yeah, and you were certainly a target, sadly. But that's the thing. Yeah, walking into a Nike, that's a company like that. That's why I was really surprised by this, because on one hand, you think Nike, that they would be, it's a reputable company. You would think that they would never tolerate something like this in their company. But yet, by the mere fact of what they do, it's very male dominated, I suppose, right? I mean, you were one woman who did many things that not many women did before,
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight the fact that it's not it wasn't a Nike, it's not a Nike only problem, which is why it was so important to shine a light on it. I did run into this is where I was. But when you're talking about the numbers that we mentioned up front, 80 million, this is happening everywhere. So, it's important to understand that. And it's really why the book highlights so many different people's stories of being, of having experienced workplace bullying. It is not only my story. You see mine kind of woven throughout. I felt it was important to share what had happened. And what I learned from it.
Yeah, it's part memoir. It's really like a part manual, really, on how to deal with this. And that's what's funny, because I started thinking myself, like, gosh, have I ever experienced bullying? I mean, I know I did, like in school and that kind of thing. And then it was funny. I just got a call from a friend. She just quit a job because it was a horrible environment, unethical, and she was verbally abused. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm literally reading a book about this right now, So I guess maybe it's a good thing that she herself walked away, Yeah,
it's interesting. I just had somebody reach out and say, isn't there anything else I can do besides walk away? Your book is called Walk Away to Win. And I hope what readers will find in the book is, you really exhaust everything that you can exhaust. The goal is not to walk away from, the goal for me was not to walk away from, this incredible brand and this company I had been at for almost 30 years. I wasn't setting out to do that. But I think the point that I got to, and it sounds like your friend got to, is when your values no longer align, that is a very tough spot to be in with your employer. That when there's that alignment is no longer there, and you really have to take stock and determine what is going to be the right answer for you. Is it going to be to stay and wait it out and hope your bully gets moved, or hope you get moved, and maybe you're aggressively looking for other opportunities? But if you are in an environment that is essentially allowing and encouraging bullying by virtue of not doing anything about it, then you've got some decisions to make, and they're very difficult decisions. By no means should this seem like this was a walk in the park.
No, because you dealt with this for several years. But before we get to, just how helpful your book is, you grew up in a family. I mean, you probably had your own like basketball squad growing up, and so you were someone who could play with the boys, I mean, you were very athletic, very talented in sports. So it wasn't like, you're a thin-skinned person or something, you knew how to handle yourself, so for you, what was that like growing up in that environment? But also you did deal with bullying as a kid. This wasn't something that was new to you.
Yeah, I mean, I had this idyllic upbringing, especially when you consider, I was from what was whispered about then as a broken home. My parents were divorced when I was little, and we were Catholic, and this was back in the, late 60s. This was not something that people talked about. But, my mom remarried, and I got this stepdad, Big Dave, who was this basketball coach. And he brought these, 4 sons into the marriage. And so I, at, age 3 or 4, suddenly had 5 older, I had 1 older brother now, and suddenly I had 5. So that's all I ever knew. And when a sport, when basketball has such an influence in your upbringing, the game of basketball, the sport, and frankly, the winning is what, you get the contract the next year, you still have your job, you've got food on the table. That was our life. So basketball really had a special seat at our table. We lived and breathed and danced and thought basketball all the time. And yeah, my brothers, being the only girl and the youngest with all these, men, it was, king of the stairs meant king of the stairs. You get chucked down the stairs if you can't figure out a way to hang on, or we just were always playing. We always, there was some kind of, always some sort of, tackling, or, just, and then our household, our kitchen table was this vibrant, my mom was a teacher. She had been a journalism major at the University of Oregon. She then became an English teacher and a history teacher. And then Big Dave was a math teacher. And so our kitchen table was this, just busy, noisy. What do you think about everything?
Yep.
My mom, she would come home, and it was like, whatever curriculum she was on, we're going to talk about apartheid today.
Oh, wow.
What's that? What's the Tet Offensive? What's Watergate? And so, and what do you think about that? And I want to know your opinion. And so I think for me that, yeah, there's all these boys, but it was always, what do you think? And what does your voice say?
Very
and what's
empowering,
your opinion?
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, that's what I really took with me through my career is, I have this voice, I'm going to use it. I'm going to, listen to your voice. You're going to use yours as well. But that was really the upbringing. It was really sport and love and, just a lot of interaction.
What was it like? You had to deal with that, with the bullying as a kid. Like, what were you taught about it at that point?
It's interesting because I think I opened the book with that that bit about being on the ice, being on the pond. I was ice skating, and
it's
that was
girls. Yeah.
it was girls.
I'm like, come
And
on, girls. Yeah.
and it's funny because nowadays, what's stuck up, so who get whatever. Well, stuck up was a big thing, right?
Yep.
That was like, and I didn't realize, you find this funny, but I didn't realize until I was writing the book that those two things were connected, that the being called stuck up on the pond skating for my grandpa, and then the graffiti on my elementary school. I never put that together, that those things had to be connected.
Mm.
And I think that had I not had the family unit that I had, I still remember walking home from ice skating, and I remember being very quiet. And then I don't remember that it became a thing. I don't remember that it was something that I had to purge out of me and really talk about my feelings. We were such a busy household. And so I am certain that the next thing then happened. And then when I saw the graffiti, I remember feeling incredibly let down because it was up for several days.
Oh,
And I loved school.
yeah.
I loved school. And so I remember just feeling super let down. And that
It's
probably,
sort of scarring almost, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and I think that overshadowed even the fact that these girls had written that. I was more bummed at my school.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to protect me,
Yep.
and not everybody is going to like me. That, I think that was an early lesson. And not my
Yeah.
brother, in your family, you always like each other,
Yeah.
and you work through it and you figure it out. And I'm going to boycott you today because I'm going to go hang out with this one. I had so many siblings, we could pick and choose. But
Right. Right.
so, I think you just got on with it. You
Yeah.
just got on with it.
Well, by the time you got to Nike, I mean, is there one thing that when you think back at your time at Nike and you think, wow, I did that, or this was so amazing, I got to meet LeBron James or whatever. I mean, is there one really specific highlight for you that really defined your time at Nike
Well, I think,
and your
there's
success as well?
there's
Yeah.
so many opportunities to meet incredible athletes and to interact with, but I think more than that, there are just incredibly talented people that you worked with every single day
Yeah.
that were creating and innovating. And then I think for me, what I always hoped my legacy is that I was somebody who could tap into talent and maybe really help you along in a way that you probably didn't even think was possible. I could tap into your potential, and we could work together so that you could then sort of leapfrog into what you wanted to do. That's probably when I look back on it, that's the most gratifying. All this stuff is cool. I worked on the London Olympics with an incredible team, all these cool things, NBA, All-Star game. But it was really about, and that's what keeps you there, is you're surrounded by incredibly talented people, and then you're tapping in to those emerging leaders coming after you, and that's so gratifying.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be amazing, but obviously, you had those amazing abilities, because otherwise you wouldn't have risen among the ranks like you did. So I guess, at what point did you realize that I think I'm in this toxic situation, or that things were happening and that you weren't having the allies and the company, like your school when you were a kid? Here's this big corporate situation, and they weren't really coming to your rescue.
It's so time is such a help in terms of looking back on what was
Yeah.
happening, because when I was in it, I really didn't know. I really did not understand what was happening. And it's why I wrote a book about it, because
Yeah.
when you're in it, you can't even talk about it or see it. Family can say something to you, your friends, and you don't even understand what they're saying. I fortunately had an annual physical, and my doctor is the one that was able to make the connection between my health. I was having, my blood pressure was through the roof, to the point where she just looked at me and said, what is happening? And I think I was in a safe place. I was asked the right question by the right person. I was able to at least talk about what was happening. And then was a medical expert, and she was able to connect what was happening, the treatment that I was experiencing, with my health deteriorating. And I I would not have figured that out. I did not know what workplace bullying was. I had a friend of mine send me a TED talk after, maybe a few weeks after that annual physical, and it was on workplace bullying, and I'd never heard of it. And my friend simply wrote, "Is this what you are experiencing?" And I watched the TED talk and I thought, oh my God, this is a thing. So I think those two moments for me started to crystallize what was happening. And I felt, after the doctor's appointment, I was incredibly sad.
Yeah.
I felt I had put my family at risk by virtue of putting my health at risk. But I also had great resolve, because I knew, once I was educated, which is what that doctor did for me,
Yeah.
I
You had
knew,
something concrete. Yeah.
I knew I would have to make a change.
Wow. So that would have been, I guess, yeah, it's the last couple of years that you were there, I imagine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's
Well,
right.
and it's amazing. I'm glad that you were able to put your own experiences in the book. I mean, you write it so much better than what I'm going to describe, but just the idea of here you were in Paris and promoted to this amazing position. And then they're going around the room and introducing people, and they don't introduce you. I'm like, what do? You're in such shock because you can't believe that somebody would be that cruel, and
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, you go kind of back to, okay, my upbringing, you're mixing it up, you fend for yourself. It's,
right.
that
You're
was
not a
kind of
prima donna.
that was kind of a slight, but okay, or was that sarcasm, or what? And that one, again, it's just those moments, those microaggressions that happen that you sort of put away. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it to get in my way. I did think something of it at the time. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, gosh, I'm here. And I've had
Yeah.
people
Like,
ask,
what do you
and
do? You're like, hello.
I've had people ask
Hi.
me,
Yeah.
well, why, hey, big talker, why don't you just get up and introduce yourself? And it's a good question. And I'm pretty sure I know the reason why I didn't, because number one, you are kind of back, you're immediately back on your heels, you're confused, you're brand new to a 40-person situation. And in that, and now knowing that person and knowing where this was going to go, I would bet that would have turned into, yeah, I'm getting to you. I'm going to introduce you.
Yeah. But I'm going to
Don't you
make you wait.
worry.
Yeah. There
So
was something too, and I had marked it down, but you said something about maybe part of it too was that your gratitude blurred your ability to see how you were being mistreated, because you're
yeah,
like, I'm at Nike. I mean, and I get it. I mean,
yeah.
I was in a work situation too, where it's like, this is amazing, but why do I feel so terrible? And, but that probably, maybe you were thinking like, this is a fantastic place. How could I possibly have a problem with
Oh, for
something?
sure. And I mean,
Yeah.
not only a fantastic place, but I'm the head of basketball for North America. I was raised by basketball. This is my dream job. My stepdad was no longer alive when I got that job, but man, my brothers they were cheering me on from the
Oh
stands.
yeah. They loved you.
We all got that job. And so certainly that gratitude and that all that history came with me into that role, and probably to the point where it was a setup. It was a set up by me, like, hey, nothing's going to live up to that. But yeah, I think gratitude for me, as I look back, and many of the people I interviewed, that was a theme that, God, but it was just such, whether it was at Nike or elsewhere, but it was so much fun. The work was so great. And I lived in Singapore and I got to do this. And so I sort of looked the other way when I was being mistreated, or I saw somebody else being mistreated. And that's what we do.
Yeah, it's in your book too. It's well, first of all, like the idea then you did walk away. That had to have been a very difficult situation, but right after that, was it something where like, I need to I have so much to say about this. Somebody just said, just do it. Write a book, no pun intended or pun intended. But yeah, that for you, you could have just said, I'm going to go on and live my life, but yet you wanted to take your experience and so many other people's experience and put it into a book.
I thought it was important, and you asked questions about my upbringing, so I can reference that so nicely. I was raised to use my voice. My mom passed away in 1983, a long time ago. But I mean, my first concert was with my mom, Helen Reddy. I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. I mean, it gives you an idea, right? And that was my mom, and Big Dave, and frankly, my grandparents. I don't think there was ever going to be an option of not talking about what had happened. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, and I didn't have the language then, and that became sort of the crux of the book was, how can I use my voice to describe something that I don't even have the language for? And so I started to explore it. I started to study workplace bullying. I really simplified it, which I tend to do. It's either public or private. It's either overt or covert. So I started in my mind, setting up those 4 quadrants, and then you got the gnarly gaslighter.
Yeah.
And, then Merriam-Webster's book or Word of 2022, it was gaslighting.
Yep.
So, everybody, was starting to understand what gaslighting meant. And so I knew there was something that was going to come out of me from this. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be a film or an op-ed or a one-woman show. I had no idea. But, fortunately, I started writing. I got the right people. I got really talented people around me to help me. And then McGraw-Hill jumped on board, and they're the ones that said, make it about more than Nike, and make it more than about you, and include men's stories of bullying as well. They really wanted, hey, if this is this pervasive, we want you to show it.
Yeah. Whereas I can imagine, like the Helen story. I mean, you have to read the book. But that, it's like, she's not a Karen, she's a Helen, but she was
a Hurricane Helen.
Hurricane Helen. Yeah. So it's like everybody protected that. And you just can't believe that the companies just don't do the right thing. But also by you speaking out, or doing what, not necessarily speaking out, but by leaving and doing that, really instigated some momentum at Nike for like a kind of a purging of bullies, right?
I think, it's interesting. I wasn't there when that that sort of purging happened, but to have a woman who was there invite me to lunch and to share with me, we knew you didn't leave to go spend time with your kids, Megan.
You love your kids.
And that had been my, that was narrative. I'm going to go spend more time with my kids. Yeah. And she said, you were the catalyst. You lit the fuse. And I didn't know that. And I really, even today, that makes me a little emotional to think about that moment and the fact that they had my back like that.
Yeah. I mean, you really, you really should thank yourself, because you had that inner fortitude, to be able to do what you did. And now you're doing Catalyst for Conversation. I totally stole your line there, but I think that's what's great. I guess in a nutshell, because you do talk about the types of bullies, but in a nutshell, what is a bully? I know there were someone who creates psychological violence. But in a nutshell, because I was talking to my husband about it, and I was like, did you ever run into bullies at work? And he's like, well, what exactly is bullying?
Yeah, I like Workplace Bullying Institute's definition. In fact, I like a lot of what they do. I leverage their data and their definitions, and they've been at this a long time, and the WBI. And that is this pattern of health harming mistreatment. And I appreciate those words. I appreciate pattern. So this isn't, I've got an abrasive boss who, looked at me sideways in a meeting, or, didn't acknowledge me in a setting or something, or had a bad piece of pizza and came to work cranky. It's not crankiness. It's not, sort of abrasiveness, but it's this pattern of health harming mistreatment. And so if that boss does that every day, then you start to see that pattern, and if that boss is that public overt, you're gonna hear yelling. It's gonna be in your face. If it's a public covert, that's kind of that rat face, like, I'm just gonna mess with you.
Yeah.
I might just click my pen while you're presenting and just see if I can, just
Or eat corn nuts.
I might do, yeah, the corn nut. I just might want to mess with you a little bit. And then there's that private overt, which is in public. Wow, you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I wish everybody could be just like you. And then private, you know what? When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. And then there's that private covert, which is really that passive aggressive. Gosh, if I had, if I'd known the meeting got moved, I would have told you. All right. If I knew your colleague made twice what you did, I would, that kind of thing. And then the gaslighter, whose reason for being is really to just make you feel like you're losing your mind. So I think that check on it is this a repeated pattern of health harming mistreatment? Am I being excluded from something on a regular basis? Am I being retaliated against on a regular, it's like, look for patterns and then document it. Start to see, if you document, then you'll start to see, oh, you know what, this is a pattern. I'm not making this up, and it's not anything I'm doing. I'm not allowing myself to be mistreated at work. I'm being mistreated at work. So, and then you sort of take it to the function that you should take it to.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me now. I remember many years ago, a bunch of us at work, I remember now us going and journaling, because there was one person who was just they got promoted and became very bullyish. And so that just triggered, I remember that we were writing down all these incidents of him being that way. But interesting. But also what's great about your book too, and your basketball knowledge and being ahead of basketball for Nike is that this really does seem like a playbook, and then how you design, and also the basketball analogies, and I love it, because it's trying to figure out working around the pick, and in terms of a situation. And so I think that is very helpful, and divided into 5 sections as well, to how to help people identify, deal, and how they respond to it, and then what to do next. I mean, it's really laid out very, very well like that. Yeah.
Thank you. The initial idea was 4 quarters and a halftime. McGraw-Hill was a little bit like, all right, already with the basketball.
Oh, I love that though.
Not everybody, but they really held my hand so nicely. And it's an ode to my stepfather, of course, the coach. And I think in those terms, that metaphor of, dropping to the court when you get the knee to the unsuspecting quad, that's what workplace bullying feels like. You're dropped. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know who your teammates are. You become paranoid. There's conspiracy, which way is up? I don't know. But what I try to do is you recognize it, you understand it, you identify it, and you navigate it, RUIN, so it does not ruin you.
Yeah. RUIN, exactly. And also too, I want people to get your book too, because I love the bully manifesto, it's so good. In fact, I was going to read a couple lines from it too, because it's so, let me pray. I mean, deep down, that's what fuels my quiet rage. I know I'm a lie and you're the truth. I mean, it's just great, because it really sums up these people, because I guess as a kid, they're a bully and they grow up to be bullies. I'm sure there's a whole scientific study as to why they're bullies, but that's where, maybe they're going to read this book too and figure out, okay, maybe I need to change my ways. In your book too, or on your website, you said, if you have a body, you're an emerging leader. What do you mean by that?
It's interesting. I'm doing quite a bit of workshopping around leadership right now because fact of the matter is not a lot of people want to talk about workplace bullying. What they do want to talk about is workplace culture and a healthy organization. So that's what I spend quite a bit of time talking, so we can fix sort of what's at the core of an organization so we don't have workplace bullying. So I appreciate that's the approach. And so when I work with leaders, emerging leaders, I usually will ask, if you're a leader in your organization, raise your hand. And I find it really fascinating because not everybody raises their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because people equate leadership with a role. Leadership is a muscle. Leadership is how you show up. So you can be an individual contributor, or you can be managing a team, and we need you to show up as a leader. We need you to show up solution oriented. We need you to show up with an idea of a vision. We need you to show up with the ability to influence. And so if you have a body, you're a leader. So that's what that means.
With your book, what kind of response have you had just in the last few months, but also, and did Nike have a response to your book?
Nike has not had an official response, nor did I really anticipate that. However, I have enough, friends who still are there, and I've had really nice outreach from them. And the ones that, I'm really tickled by are, I read your book. I appreciate your book. I bought it for my department. We're going to discuss your book. And so what's great for me is that people are able to see what it is about, which is anti-bullying, and what it isn't about, which is anti-Nike. It is an anti-bullying book, and it is a pro-healthy workplace culture book. And so I'm appreciating that people are understanding that.
Yeah. In the book you sent me, you wrote, define your win.
Yeah. How are you doing on that?
I know, I'm trying, but yeah, can you define your win in terms of what you went through and where you're at now as a coach, as a consultant?
Yeah, I think that alignment of values with what I'm doing, whether that is professionally or personally, if we're in that alignment, that's always a win. And I think because of my upbringing, which was winning always meant muscling through, working hard. I think what happened is I got confused when I was mistreated. I kept using that same definition. Well, winning is muscling through. Winning is staying the course. I've got to beat this. I had people say, "Don't let the bully win." You're right, damn right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to let the bully win. And then I realized, well, just because I leave a situation that is health harming to me, that does not make me a loser or a failure or even a quitter. It actually makes me a winner, because I have been able to define what winning is. That took a long time to get to that point. That wasn't sort of an overnight sensation. Yeah. So that's, to me, what defining your win is define your own win. What's that mean to you?
Yeah. And sometimes that might involve walking away from a situation too.
It might.
Yeah. So ultimately, do you hope your book is going to end bullying for good? Or what do you have to say to those bullies out there?
Well, we're on to you. We're on to you. It's not about the targets. We're not allowing ourselves to be bullied, and we're not alone, and we're uniting, and we're on to you, and we're defining our own win. The book is not going to erase bullying. What the book will do, hopefully, is ignite conversation. What we should be able to sort of start to reverse that trajectory, that 80 million person trajectory, is talking about it, putting language to it, and workshopping. What does it mean to have a healthy workplace?
Yep.
What does it mean when we don't just talk about delivering results, but we talk about how we deliver results? How, we're not only talking about, well, I'm an excellent communicator or I'm an excellent influencer. Well, why are you that? Is it because you're empathetic? So once corporations and brands and organizations can understand that it's not solely about core competencies and a bottom line, that there's behaviors that we need to reward, I think we're going to be well on our way. And I hope my book is part of that conversation.
I would say so. Thank you, Megan. This is
Thank
great.
you, Stacey. Thanks
This
so
is
much.
fantastic. Oh, and I guess I should shout out to Casey Thompson for introducing us.
Yes.
That was awesome. So,
thanks,
well,
Casey.
thank you. Now you can learn more about Megan Carle and her book, Walk Away to Win, by going to our website, thewomenseye.com. And there you'll also find our books, 20 Women Changemakers. You just shop wherever you buy books and at changemakersbook.com, and 20 Women Storytellers at womenstorytellers.com. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel. Again, thank you, Megan. This is an awesome book, Walk Away to Win. And to all of you for tuning in to the Women's Eye podcast. I'm Stacey Gualandi. Remember, it's the world as we see it.